right. So this week we're going to take a little trip from Bow Lake over to Peyto Lake. And in doing so, we're going to stay at not one, but two huts and cross a small ice field. It's a pretty benign ice cap, not a lot of crevasses in it, and the ones that are in it are very easy to avoid. So I would put this in the mountaineering scale as very, very low, especially if the glacier is dry and snow-free, which it is quite a bit of the year, if you were to go in late July and August. So the trip itself starts at Bow Hut, follows the lake, goes up the canyon, up another canyon, then eventually it loops around near the end of it and takes you to Bow Hut. On the second day, you cross the Wapta Icefields. And it's a good idea to rope up for this, although there's very few crevasses. And if you follow the line I give you, you won't find any probably. And then on the last day, you leave Peyto Hut and then down Peyto Glacier, eventually catching a big moraine down to the lake and onto Heartbreak Hill, which is a 1,000-foot climb back to the highway. So this is where your journey will begin once you get to Bow Lake. The car parking lot is right here, and this is Numteja Lodge, which has a history of its own. The first part of your trip is just going to follow along this lake shore, which is pretty simple. If you had two glass eyes, you wouldn't have any trouble finding it. And then just continue along the creek drainage. This is Bow Creek, I guess at this point. It's not quite a river yet, so we'll call it Bow Creek, and this is Bow Lake right here. All right, so this is where we're going to start our journey. So I'll just walk you through sort of the step-by-step getting up to Bow Hut through a series of slides here. This is Bow Lake, and just to our right, out of sight, is Numteja Lodge. And you'll walk around the lake and eventually end up here following this creek. So as you follow along the river, this is the river that we're going to be following. This is Bow River. It has a pretty well beaten path. You'll eventually get to this canyon, and we have to get across this canyon or this river somehow. And fortunately, you know, a bunch of years back, me and a buddy of mine, we had a little bit of time to kill. So we put this big boulder in place over the canyon. And what I would suggest is, you know, these guys have their packs on, is just to take your time. This is kind of a steep little step with a kind of a rock move. And maybe taking people's packs, taking them and stacking them over on the other side, and taking that little bit of extra time, because this is one of the few places that you could actually screw up. And as you can see, it wouldn't be great if you fell off there into the canyon or something like that. And just has a nice little, the trail starts to pick up again. In about 5 minutes or less, you'll come to this viewpoint here, and this is the Bow Falls right here. And this way up here is Polaris, right? And that's the onion skin that is accessible, as something you could climb from the Bow Hut without having to use a rope or worry about glacier travel. All right, so this is the river you're going to be following, or the creek you're going to be following. You can bring it up here. That'll bring you, there's a good, this is where I often stop right at this corner here, because it's the last place you can get accessible water for about 2 or 3 kilometers. Anyhow, you have to go up the canyon. So it's got a nice little natural stopping place. Along the trail, of course, there's great scenery and, you know, great places to stop and hang out for a little bit. Want to get a rest. Eventually, you'll come to this point where you're in the last part of the basin. And the trail itself kind of follows up on the left-hand side, works its way around, and you got to get past this waterfall. So it loops around and comes up this sort of, you can't really see it, but this hidden canyon. And Bow Hut is right here. You see it right there? There's Bow Hut there. And this is, there's a trail you'll pick up on the backside here. You can't really get lost. You know, this is what it looks like. Crossing this creek here There's no right or wrong way about it. Just find where there's shallow enough so that you can jump on boulders. But most people walk away without having to take their shoes off or getting their feet wet. Bow hut, looking down at it. And this is what you'll come to when you come up the trail. It's got a nice little patio. The left-hand part is the sleeping portion of it. The hut sleeps about 30 people, and it's busy in the summertime. And this portion of the hut is the kind of cooking area. Has a sewage sort of, or gray water filters, which are what these are. They're not missile silos. Inside the hut, you have all the amenities that you need. Has a wood stove, and then we have, when the wood burning, we put water in here just so there's plenty of hot water. This is especially important in the wintertime because we have to melt snow for water. And you can see it's got gas lanterns, gas stoves, sort of plates, cups, shared accommodations, a couple of sinks for doing dishes. So it's pretty comfortable. And then, you know, like the wood in the afternoon or in the evenings heats the place up, so it's comfortable at night. And it has a bit of a history, right? And people just hang out in their own social groups, find something to do. Some are drinking beer. Kids come up to here quite often. This is a great place to take your kids if you want to take them to give them a wilderness experience or a mountaineering experience with not too much difficulty and a fairly comfortable place to stay at the end of it. So for most people, day one, you know, just you manage to get to the hut, make dinner, haul water, chop some wood, do your share of the chores around the hut, and just kind of relax. The following day, though, if you want to do something, you're kind of limited if you're not equipped with mountaineering gear or you don't have mountaineering objectives. The one thing that you could do is just follow this blue line, and this doesn't take you onto any ice. You can scramble up to the rocks. So when you come up from Bow Hut, if you wanted to go climb Polaris, this is the bench that you come up from the hut, you'll come up over here, and you can easily come up and stay on rock the whole way. You can scramble up over here, or just walk up on these little snowfields if they're still existing. You don't have to worry about crevasses here. It might be a little undercut on the edges, but it's usually pretty good. Or if you're nervous about it, stay on the rock, and you can get all the way to the top of Polaris without having to worry about it. To the rocks, to the top of the onion skin. Everything else is going to take you out onto the ice and requires some mountaineering equipment, whether you go to Gordon, over to Rhonda, over to Nicholas or Olive. You still have to cross that glacier. And mountaineering experience is advised for any of those objectives. So overall, I would say, you know, if it's just a hut trip that you're doing, you can go pretty light, bring really decent food. Sleeping bags don't have to be too warm because you're indoors and you're sharing a room with a number of people. So that keeps it fairly warm just in itself. There's not a lot. You can book the hut through the Alpine Club of Canada, and they'll deal with all the parks permitting and whatever fees that are involved with that. I think it runs about $40 a night per person, and then cheaper for children. But you'll have to look that up at the Alpine Club of Canada's website. You can check that in the show notes. So thanks. We'll go on and get the next episode is day 2, where we take you from Bow Hut out here, and I'll get you out to Peyto Hut and down the Peyto Glacier to the glaciology station, and eventually down the moraines and back to the highway via Peyto Lake. Okay, so if you're from out of town, you're probably wondering, where is this place? And I'm sure most of you are from out of town. The most likely place that you're going to approach it from is Calgary. If you're visiting or being a tourist or on a mountaineering tour, Then Calgary will be your fly-in destination at YYC. You'll land there and then catch a car or whatever mode of transportation you decide that you're going to take, and you'll be going to Banff. And Banff is going to be one of the last resupply points. So either do it Calgary, Canmore, or Banff. And then 45 minutes from Banff is Lake Louise, and then another 40 minutes to Bow Lake. All right. So where is this location, you are wondering? Well, if you approach it from Calgary, which is about the easiest way for most people, you can fly into YYC or drive up, and you're going to be heading to Banff. Get all your supplies either in Calgary, Canmore, or Banff, because after that there is nothing. 45 minutes from Banff, you'll hit Lake Louise, and then Highway 93 towards Jasper, and you'll be at Bow Lake in another 40 minutes. The entire trip is about 2 hours, 2 hours, 20 minutes from Calgary to the trailhead in Bow Lake.